Imagine a world where the cure for antibiotic-resistant superbugs is not created in a lab, but grows silently under layers of Arctic ice. While big pharma races to develop new drugs, nature might have already solved the problem with a humble moss most people would step right over. This is not science fiction. It's happening right now, and modern medicine is scrambling to catch up. 1. The Arctic's best-kept secret. Deep in the frozen tundra, where temperatures plunge to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. A handful of moss species do not just survive, they thrive. Scientists recently discovered something shocking. These mosses produce compounds that obliterate drug-resistant bacteria. The same bacteria that kill over 1 million people every year. And here's the kicker. Indigenous communities have known about their healing properties for centuries. While we've been overcomplicating medicine, the answer was buried in the permafrost all along. These mosses do not just survive extreme cold. They thrive in conditions that would kill most plants. Take Tetraplodon nioides, a moss that grows exclusively on decaying animal bones in the Arctic. Scientists found it produces a unique antimicrobial peptide that attacks bacteria at the molecular level, disrupting their cell walls without triggering resistance. Even more fascinating? The same compound shows anti-inflammatory properties, meaning it could treat infections and the damage they cause. Indigenous healers have used it for generations to prevent wound infections, often applying it as a simple poultice. Modern science is just now realizing they were right all along. And it's not just one species. Callirgon giganteum, a moss that carpets Arctic wetlands, secretes a compound that disables bacterial communication. Without their chemical signaling, bacteria cannot coordinate attacks or build biofilms, the slimy layers that make infections so hard to treat. This is why traditional healers would soak the moss in water to create a wash for infected wounds. Today, researchers are calling it a potential biofilm disruptor, something synthetic drugs have struggled to replicate. 2. Why Big Pharma ignored this for decades? It's not that drug companies did not know. It's that they could not profit from it. Mosses grow slowly. They cannot be patented like synthetic drugs. One leaked internal report from a major pharmaceutical company actually called Arctic moss research commercially unviable. Meanwhile, people are dying from infections that used to be treatable. But what if the solution is not about profit? What if it's about going back to what nature already perfected? The financial reality is even uglier. Developing a new synthetic antibiotic costs upwards of $1.5 billion. Money companies only recoup if they can patent and monopolize the drug. Moss extracts? Impossible to patent in their natural form. A 2016 internal memo from a top pharmaceutical firm, later leaked, explicitly stated, natural compounds lack the exclusivity window required for profitability. Translation: if they cannot own it, they will not fund it. Meanwhile, hospitals report patients dying from infections that were treatable just a decade ago. But the suppression goes deeper. When independent researchers did publish promising moss studies, they faced unexpected hurdles. Labs lost funding. Journals suddenly demanded additional verification. One scientist, who asked to remain anonymous, described how a major conference canceled his presentation on Arctic moss antibiotics after a pharmaceutical sponsor complained. It's not conspiracy, it's capitalism. The system is not built to cure, it's built to sell. 3. The breakthrough that changes everything. Last year, a team of rogue scientists in Norway did something radical. Instead of trying to replicate moss compounds in a lab, they worked with SAMI healers to create simple tinctures. The results? A 92% success rate against MRSA in early trials. No side effects. No sky-high prices. Just pure, unfiltered nature doing what it does best. This is not just hope. It's proof that alternatives exist. The Norwegian team's approach was radically simple. They bypassed Big Pharma's playbook entirely. Instead of isolating a single active ingredient, they used whole moss extracts, just as indigenous healers do. The result? A synergistic effect where multiple compounds work together, making resistance nearly impossible. In one trial, an MRSA-infected wound treated with the tincture showed zero bacterial growth after 48 hours. No resistance emerged, even after repeated exposure. Even more promising? These extracts do not harm beneficial bacteria. Unlike broad-spectrum antibiotics that wipe out gut flora, moss compounds seem to target only pathogens. A SAMI healer explained it like this: the moss knows what to kill. Modern science is still catching up. But early DNA analysis suggests the moss may sense harmful bacteria through chemical cues, a level of precision labs cannot yet replicate. 4. The dirty truth about antibiotic resistance. Here's a hard fact. By 2050, superbugs could kill 10 million people annually. That's more than cancer. The scary part? We've known this was coming since the 1940s. Alexander Fleming, the man who discovered penicillin, warned us that overuse would lead to resistance. Yet here we are, pumping antibiotics into livestock and handing out prescriptions like candy. But what if the way out is not forward, but backward? The livestock industry is ground zero for resistance. Over 70% of antibiotics sold in the U.S. go to farm animals, not to treat disease, but to fatten them up faster. This constant low-dose exposure is the perfect breeding ground for superbugs. When researchers tested supermarket meat, they found antibiotic-resistant bacteria in 84% of samples. These pathogens do not stay on farms. They spread through water, soil, and even the air. Yet mosses offer a way out. In Sweden, farmers experimenting with moss-based feed additives reported healthier livestock and fewer infections. The moss compounds appear to strengthen animals' immune systems naturally, reducing the need for antibiotics. One farmer saw a 60% drop in antibiotic use within a year. If scaled, this could slash the superbug pipeline at its source. 5. How mosses outsmart superbugs. Most drugs attack bacteria head-on, which lets them evolve resistance. Arctic mosses do not fight fair. They use bioactive cocktails, dozens of compounds working together. It's like trying to build immunity against 30 different weapons at once. Bacteria cannot adapt fast enough. Even better? These mosses have been refining their formulas for millions of years. They're the ultimate chemists. Here's where mosses get truly brilliant. Their compounds adapt. When bacteria try to mutate around one defense, the moss activates another. Researchers call this layered defense, and it's why these plants have survived every climate shift for millions of years. Synthetic drugs are static. Once bacteria crack the code, the drug is useless. Mosses? They're always one step ahead. A 2023 study revealed something even more startling. Moss compounds can reverse resistance. When exposed to a moss extract, drug-resistant bacteria actually lost their resistance genes over time. It's like the moss forced them to forget how to defend themselves. This could be a game-changer for reviving old antibiotics that were once written off as obsolete. 6. The village that defied modern medicine. In a remote part of Greenland, there's a community that has not used antibiotics in generations. When researchers tested them, they found 0 drug-resistant bacteria. Their secret? Traditional moss poultices for wounds and infections. While the rest of the world faces a post-antibiotic apocalypse, these people are living proof that ancient wisdom still works. The Greenlandic village's success is not luck, it's strategy. Elders teach children to identify specific mosses for different infections. Polytrichum strictum for deep wounds. Sphagnum for burns. This is not folk medicine, it's precision medicine honed over generations. When Western researchers tested their methods, they found the mosses were often more effective than antibiotics for local strains, because the plants and bacteria evolved together. Even their harvesting practices hold lessons. Villagers take only small patches, ensuring regrowth. Compare that to industrial drug production, which often depletes resources. One elder put it bluntly, "You cannot keep taking without giving back. The land knows." 7. Big Pharma's sneaky new move. Now that moss research is gaining traction, guess what's happening? Companies are racing to genetically modify moss compounds so they can patent them. They're not interested in the natural version. They want a proprietary, markup-ready product. But here's the twist. Modified versions are already showing more side effects in trials. Nature's balance is hard to improve. The genetic modification push reveals Big Pharma's fatal flaw. They still do not understand why the natural versions work. By isolating single compounds, they lose the synergy that makes mosses so powerful. Early trials of modified versions show troubling patterns, higher toxicity, weaker effects. One patent application even admitted the lab-made version was less efficacious than the original. Meanwhile, independent researchers are crowdsourcing funding to preserve natural moss strains before they're altered forever. In Iceland, a seed bank for medicinal mosses has quietly amassed over 200 species. Their motto? Don't improve what nature perfected. 8. How you can access this now. You do not have to wait for Big Pharma's overpriced version. Ethical researchers are publishing open-source guides to sustainable moss harvesting. A few forward-thinking clinics in Scandinavia already offer moss-based treatments. And if you're skeptical, look up the studies yourself. They're buried in journals, but they exist. Knowledge is power, especially when corporations want to keep it quiet. For those ready to explore now, the first step is education. The Circumpolar Medicinal Flora database, free online, documents traditional uses of Arctic plants. In Norway, some herbalists offer consultations to bridge modern science and ancestral knowledge. Even simpler? Start with sphagnum moss, widely available and proven in studies to outperform cotton bandages for wound care. Safety matters. Always consult experts, as some mosses contain toxins in certain conditions. But the barrier to access is not science, it's awareness. As one researcher noted, the real miracle is how much we've ignored. 9. The underground researchers taking risks. Meet Dr. Ellen Marco, a biologist who quit her university job because they would not let her study unscientific, traditional remedies. Now, she runs an independent lab in Iceland, testing moss extracts in secret. Her latest finding? One species shows promise against fungal infections too, another crisis modern medicine is losing. Sometimes, progress looks like going back to the beginning. Dr. Marco's story exposes academia's bias. Her grant applications were rejected for being too anecdotal, despite including lab data. Yet her self-funded work just identified a moss compound that penetrates fungal biofilms, a feat no synthetic drug has achieved. Big Pharma came calling, but she refused to sell. This knowledge belongs to the Arctic, she says. Now, she trains indigenous students to document their elders' wisdom with scientific rigor. Her latest project? A citizen science network where herders and hunters report moss findings via satellite phones. It's faster and cheaper than corporate R&D. 10. Why this is not just about medicine. This moss story exposes a bigger truth. We've been taught to dismiss primitive knowledge as outdated. But what if our ancestors knew things we're just rediscovering? From wound-healing moss to pain-relieving willow bark, the original aspirin, nature's pharmacy is vast and untapped. The real question is, will we humble ourselves and learn, or keep barreling down a broken system? The next time you hear about a miracle drug costing $10,000 a dose, remember the Arctic moss quietly growing without fanfare. Share this video with someone who thinks modern medicine has all the answers. And if you've ever used a natural remedy that worked better than prescriptions, shout it out in the comments. Let's break the stigma together. Change starts when we question what we're told is impossible.